Mattawan Lodge back in 1975, so almost 40 years ago. And my family has, I think, now by the total, I have 6 of my family, my generations, in that lodge. My son was the last, and 5 of them have been past masters. I was nominated by my lodge. Well, first I was approached. I had never thought about Grand Lodge, never thought about becoming active at it, only because I was very happy doing what I was doing in all my other endeavors.
And who approached you?
Well, some folks I have a lot of respect for.
Are these people that are your friends that say this? We think this will be good for you?
Yeah. And some,
is there a committee that actively looks?
No. This was
so it's just through
just some people had seen me and gotten to know me and said, you know, Mark, you ought to. We'd really like you to think about this. And I was very honored. I hadn't thought about it. But when I talked to my wife and I realized what a huge commitment it is. I mean, you've got an organization with 35,000 members, plus their wives, hundreds of employees, a budget in the hundreds of millions of dollars. It is a big job and a big responsibility. And I thought about it a great deal, and I felt that I was at a point in my life where I could really dedicate myself a substantial part of my time to help and fulfill that. I owed it to my guys at Lodge, I owed it to my family, that if they felt that strong that they thought that I was something I should do, then I felt I should step up to the plate and do it.
So once you make that decision and you go, yes, I want to do that, what's the next step?
The Lodge nominated me, and then that nomination is presented on the floor of the Grand Lodge. And one thing that I did when I was out and around introducing myself, you say running, but I never once asked anybody to vote for me the whole time. I just introduced myself to people.
So that's prior to the actual Grand Lodge,
right?
Where you spend how much, like a year doing this?
No, I think I was approached in September, and October, November is when my lodge nominated me. And what I did is even though I'd been a Freemason for 40 years almost, you know, I'm familiar with my little bit of southwestern Michigan, and to some degree Detroit and some other places, but I really wanted to get out and meet guys, you know, all the way from Marquette to Elk Rapids to Charlevoix to Wayne and Detroit. It's a big state and a big fraternity. And I wanted to familiarize myself with a lot of what was going on out there and see if some of what I thought was, from my 40 years, was things I'd be hearing back from these lodges. And so it was a real learning experience for me, and it was well worth it. Well worth it.
You would contact the lodge and let them know you were coming and find out when their regular meeting is? Or
sometimes there are regular meetings. A lot of times it would be installations. A lot of times it would be lodges of instruction. I just go in and say, hi, I'm Mark Manning from Mattawan Lodge, and sit down and chat with the guys.
Right. What did you take away from that whole experience?
You know, I'll tell you, what I found out is that Freemasonry in Michigan is much more vital than some people might think. There's a lot of people that say, hey, this is a dying fraternity, and it's not. I mean, they're looking at membership situations, but what I see is a whole new breed of young Freemasons coming into the craft. And these guys are really dedicated. They're really looking for what Freemasonry has to offer. And as these guys, a lot of them from the service, they've served over in Iraq or overseas, they're going to bring a new lifeblood into this fraternity. And it's going to be, our future is going to be bright. It's going to be bright. You know, I really felt I owed it to my family, the men that raised me. And when I say raised, I mean I grew up in this town. And when I was 21 and became a Freemason, I was looking at all the men who were important and well respected and just good, solid men in that community. And they were dedicated Freemasons. They're proud to be Freemasons. And if this was a way that I could help give back, I really felt I owed it to them to do it. And I've made so many friends of my brothers over the years in the Rose Croix and the chapter. You'll see a lot of them here today. It was a good way for me to try to repay some of that back. I can't even begin to repay all the good things Freemasonry has given me. But this was a start. It was a start. What advice would I give somebody that wanted to run for Grand Lodge? Number one, don't look at the fancy apron or the gold chains and the rest of that. It's much more than that. It's something you need to bring dedication to the craft on. It isn't what it does for you, it's what you're doing for the craft.
Right.
Because they depend on you.
Right.
Grand Lodge, purely by the geographic area you're going to have to cover and be involved with, is going to require some flexibility in terms of your employment. You know, if a guy's punching a clock 7 to 3 or 9 to 5, and he's going to have a rough road to hoe. He has to have some flexibility in his ability to manage his schedule. Now, I was, because I'm an attorney and I work for myself. And there aren't too many places I can't get in a couple hours around the state of Michigan. You also have to have a very understanding family. I mean, my wife's just a peach, because there's days or weeks that she wouldn't see me for weeks on end in the evening. And so you've got to have a very understanding family. You've got to have, I think, the financial resources to do it. And you've got to have the flexibility in your career that you can do it. Now, does that mean, I think, if I look forward down the road, I think we may have to change some of the requirements that we have for Grand Lodge officers and the expectations to be more flexible with their professional careers. If you really want to attract the very best we have to help the craft, then you've got to understand that there's going to be some trade-offs there between what they can do professionally and what they can devote to the craft. And probably the old days where a lot of those time commitments were pretty well set in stone and it was protocol, we may have to change some of that and start to realize that there's accommodations that we need to make to really attract the very best men into the leadership position. Ago, every Grand Master, remember I'm going back 40 years in my personal experience, it always seemed that every Grand Master had kind of their own pet project or program. And I think the day and age when that would work is pretty well gone. It takes too much time to successfully develop a program and to have the staff sign on to it, have the craft sign on to it. And what I'm seeing happen, and I see it on this Grand Lodge line that I'm in, is the idea of teamwork. That there may be programs that come out of this, and people will opt into them and say, hey, I'm going to support that and we're going to move that through, so that we're not whipsawing, here's the program of the month. The resources just don't allow us to do that, and they're not effective. It becomes ineffective, and I think to properly help the craft, we need to make sure that there's continuity of purpose. And so I'd like to see a lot of teamwork there. And as I said, I see it with the guys that I'm involved with now. So I think that's going to continue.
Yeah, I like.
As I traveled around the state, I'd hear this same refrain from guys young men coming into my lodge, and I heard it from men across the state. What they universally said is, I want more. They want to know about the esoteric things. They want to know about the historical things. They want to know about the symbolism and the more esoteric parts of the craft. They want to be involved more socially and through our charitable activities. And they want to be much more active in the craft than maybe the generations before. And we have to meet that need. And if we meet that need, we'll retain that membership. If becoming a Freemason is nothing more than a guy goes through 3 degrees, and that's it, and he has nothing more to follow through on or get involved with and active in, we're not going to retain him. We're not going to retain him. We shouldn't dummy down the craft. These men want to know their heritage, they want to know the history behind it, and they want to have that emotional connection to the craft. And if they do, then they're going to stick it out, and they'll be very proud and active in their Freemasonic life. So I think the future is very bright for Freemasonry.